Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the conference. We were supposed to begin at 3 p.m., but I'd like to apologize for the delay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Seoul International Conference 2021 on urban food. I'd like to introduce myself to you. I am announcer Lee Seung-hee, MC for today's event. Nice to meet you. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all the Korean and foreign experts and officials who are joining the event online and offline despite their busy schedules around the world. This conference is being held under the theme of the transformation of the urban food system to respond to the climate change. There are rising concerns about food security due to the rapidly changing climate environment. Therefore, we'd like to learn from each other by sharing advanced food system cases of cities home and abroad and discuss the directions of the urban food policy. Today's conference is consisted of 2 sessions. In session 1, we'll discuss the building of a sustainable and healthy food system in the era of the climate crisis. And in the following session 2, we will share examples of ecological city transition through food resources recycling. And please stay with us until the last moment of the conference. And please show your support through online and offline. This conference is being broadcast live around the world through Seoul's YouTube channel. Before starting the conference, I'd like to kindly ask the presenters who are connected by video. We are broadcasting online, so please double-check your network connection, especially your camera, and also pay attention to your microphone and volume. And before we begin, I'd like to introduce panelists and the speakers. I'd like to introduce speakers around the world. Director of Food and Waste of C40 cities, Mr. Zachary Tofias. Thank you for joining us. Director of Global Action and Senior Advisor to the Executive Chair, Ms. Luzain Al-Kodmani. Thank you. We have Mr. Filippo Gavazzani, Head of MUFPP Secretariat. He's joining us online. Thank you very much. I am very keen to hear his presentation. And also we have ladies and gentlemen joining us offline here, right here in person. We have Professor Kim Cho-il, who is representing the Department of Food and Nutrition of Seoul National University. Yes, we are welcoming him with a big round of applause here. And also we have Mr. Lee Sang-hyun, Director of Health Policy at the Center for Health and Social Change. We'd like to welcome you. Thank you. And also we have Mr. Lee Chang-pyo, Biodiversity Campaigner of Greenpeace Korea. We have Professor Hwang Ji-yoon, Department of Food and Nutrition of Sangmyeong University. Last but not least, we have Ms. Park Yu-mi, representing the Seoul City Government, Director of Citizens Health Bureau. Thank you. So we are joined by these wonderful speakers home and abroad, and we look forward to the presentations. Now, I'd like to invite our representative who will deliver a welcome speech to you. I'd like to welcome Director Ms. Park.
Greetings. I am Yumi Park, Director of Citizens Health Bureau of Seoul Metropolitan Government. I'd like to thank all of you for your generous support and help for this whole Urban Food International Conference 2021. In particular, I'm very happy to have online and offline participations. As global temperature rises faster, the social transformation at the global level is urgent in line with the era of a climate crisis. As a result, in the food industry, as well as recognizing the importance of urban food system transformation in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which account for a large portion of global warming. Therefore, today's conference, under the theme of transformation of the urban food system to respond to the climate crisis, would like to exchange various opinions on building a sustainable and healthy food systems to respond better to the climate crisis. Starting with the signing of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact in 2015, the Seoul Metropolitan Government has been awarded the Milan Pact Award in the food supply and distribution field in 2018 for its public meal policy for urban-rural co-prosperity. In addition, from 2019 to the present, the city has been serving on the MUFPP Steering Committee as a representative of Asia-Pacific region and participating in C40 Good Food Cities Declaration. In the era of climate change, for the transformation of a sustainable urban food system, we'd like to continue sharing excellent policies of domestic and foreign cities, as well as exploring various ways to resolve current issues. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for your interest and participation in the Seoul 2021 International Conference on Urban Food System. We wish everyone very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Ms. Park. Thank you for giving us the opening remarks. As Ms. Park just mentioned, that due to the climate change, that the food system, the urban food system, seeks new ways to go through the difficult times. So I'd like to ask you to find ways for us to build healthy food system. So before we start the first session of the Seoul International Conference on Urban Food, I have prepared a special session. And before we begin, I'd like to ask you to join us together to watch a video of the Seoul Metropolitan Government's 5-year basic plan for food.
단순히 배고픔을 채우는 음식이 아닌 시민 누구나 기본적으로 누려야 할 권리가 된 먹거리. 코로나와 같은 감염병 발생과 전 세계적인 기후 환경의 변화, 원전 오염수 해양 방출로 오염된 수입 해산물이 유입되고 수입 김치 등이 늘어감에 따라 먹거리에 대한 시민들의 불안감이 증가하고 있습니다. 이에 서울시는 시민과 함께 건강하고 안전한 먹거리를 지키기 위해 나섰습니다. 2017년 서울시는 전국 최초로 먹거리 보장 선언과 함께 서울시 먹거리 기본 조례를 만들고 서울시 먹거리 시민위원회를 출범했습니다. 이를 통해 서울시와 민간을 중심으로 함께 먹거리에 대해 고민하며 먹거리 정책들이 정착하는 데 기여했습니다.
서울시 먹거리 시민위원회는 모든 시민이 먹거리 기본권을 누릴 수 있도록 먹거리의 생산, 가공, 유통, 소비, 폐기, 다원화 단계를 아우르는 통합적인 먹거리 체계를 만들고자 지난 4년여간 시민과 함께 지혜를 모아 서울시 먹거리 전략 2030을 마련하였습니다.
안전하고 건강한 먹거리 정책에 대한 시민 참여 활성화를 위해 전국 최초로 시민 주도형 먹거리 시민위원회를 구성하고 심포지엄, 토론회 등을 개최해 다양한 먹거리 정책을 제안하고 추진했습니다. 밀라노 도시 먹거리 정책 협약 도시로 참여했습니다. 2019년에는 시민위원회를 중심으로 워킹그룹을 구성해 사회 경제적 취약계층 먹거리 실태 연구, 서울시 먹거리 통계 분석과 지역 특색을 고려한 먹거리를 구축하는 등 기존 먹거리 마스터 플랜의 가치를 확장하는 기틀을 마련했습니다. 이를 바탕으로 2020년 제2기 먹거리 시민위원회가 결성되었으며 먹거리 5개년 기본계획을 세우기 위해 실무 TF를 구성, 심층 논의가 진행되었습니다. 그리고 2021년 서울시와 먹거리 시민위원회가 오랜 시간 치열한 논의를 거쳐 드디어 서울시 먹거리 정책 5개년 기본계획이 수립되었습니다.
코로나19, 기후변화, 다양한 환경 생태학적 변화로 인해 사회 전반으로 시민의 먹거리에 대한 불안감은 높아지고 있습니다. 전 세계적인 먹거리 불안 위기 속에서도 서울시는 안전하고 건강한 먹거리 정책을 펼쳐나가고 있습니다.
서울시 먹거리 5개년 기본계획은 6가지 핵심 가치 아래 시행되는데요. 생애 주기별 맞춤형 식생활을 실천할 수 있도록 안전하고 건강한 먹거리 환경을 조성하고 누구에게나 충분하고 질 높은 먹거리를 제공하며 기후 변화 및 재난에 대응할 수 있는 먹거리 보장 체계를 구축합니다. 도시와 농어촌 간의 먹거리 체계를 구축, 지역 상생 먹거리 경제를 활성화할 수 있게 지원하며 먹거리 기반 공동체를 지원하고 먹거리 돌봄 체계를 구축합니다. 또한 기후 변화에 대응할 수 있는 먹거리 실천 환경을 조성할 것입니다. 이러한 모든 정책들은 서울 시민에게 먹거리를 통한 행복이라는 가치로 다가갈 것입니다.
서울 시민을 위한 먹거리 정책의 핵심 가치인 행복을 위해 시행되는 서울시 먹거리 정책 5개년 기본 계획은 7개 분야, 19개 이행 과제, 45개 세부 사업으로 수립되었으며 특히 재난에 능동적으로 대응하는 먹거리 지원 시스템을 구축하고 1인 가구 먹거리 지원 체계를 마련하고 선제적 먹거리 안전관리 감시 시스템을 강화하며 먹거리 정책 통합 추진 및 평가 체계를 구축함으로써 서울 시민을 위한 지속 가능한 먹거리 체계를 만들어 갈 것입니다.
서울 시민 모두가 먹거리 기본권을 누릴 수 있는 행복한 서울. 서울시 먹거리 정책 5개년 기본 계획이 함께하겠습니다.
코로나로 인해 청년들은 학업과 더불어 소득과 식비의 부담이 커졌어요. 점점 균형 잡힌 식사를 하는 것이 어려워지고 또 대충 끼니를 때운 일이 많았는데 서울시에서 청년이나 1인 가구 먹거리에 대한 지원 정책이 있다고 하니 진짜 든든해요.
아이를 키우다 보니 급식 위생이나 식재료에 대한 불안감이 컸는데 서울시에서 체계적으로 먹거리에 대해 감시하고 관리해준다고 하니 안심하고 먹일 수 있을 것 같아요.
급변하는 먹거리 변화에 적극 대응하는 서울의 맞춤형 먹거리 정책이 필요합니다. 이에 서울시는 시민에게 선도적으로 먹거리 안전 시스템 마련으로 질적인 먹거리 지원 확대와 식생활 역량 강화를 하는 정책으로 모든 시민이 먹거리로 행복의 가치를 높일 수 있도록 더욱 노력하겠습니다.
서울시 차원에서 마련된 먹거리 정책 5개년 기본 계획이 잘 실행될 수 있도록 먹거리위원회도 함께 노력하겠습니다. 지속 가능한 먹거리 도시 서울시를 만들기 위해 시민 여러분들의 관심과 참여를 부탁드립니다.
서울시 먹거리 정책 5개년 기본 계획으로 서울 시민 모두가 잘 먹는 것이 쉬워집니다.
Thank you. This video helped us understand the importance of and opportunities of a sustainable urban food system and the 5-year master plan of Seoul. We can see how much effort Seoul City has put to create this master plan. And now, Ms. Yumi Park, the Director of Citizens Health Bureau of Seoul Metropolitan Government, will make a presentation with the title of Seoul's 5-year basic plan of food policy and vision. Please welcome her with a big hand. Greetings again. I am Yumi Park that just delivered the welcoming speech. We faced a huge crisis of COVID-19 and that generate vulnerable classes to food. And increasing problems are coming to us to be resolved at the local community level. So Seoul City decided to resolve this kind of issue at the comprehensive and gradual manner. That's why we put the Seoul City's 5-year master plan. To begin with, I'd like to share current status of food of Seoul citizens. It shows the percentage of people with fruit and vegetable intake deficiency. About 69% of people eat less than 500 grams of fruit and vegetables per day, and the proportion of the population is decreasing on a constant basis. And in survey on changes in eating habits after pandemic, about 30% of respondents reported that they gained weight. It is higher than the percentage of people reporting weight loss. And if you look at the percentage of nutritional deficiency by income level, based on the Seoul average level of 12%, those with 70% or more median incomes are 9.3%, and those with less than 30% median incomes are 17.4%. So gap is obvious. So our approach should be case by case. And we also checked that I just mentioned that the average of Seoul citizens for the nutritional intake is 12%, but this number goes to 9.3% for those with 70% or higher median income, and that number goes to 17.4% for those with less than 30% median income. And 26% of GHG are coming from the food system, and the food loss before eating generates 6% of the GHG at the global level. So we need to have measures to reduce the food waste and food loss. So that is the very quick overview of the food system. The food is the basic right to citizens. Any Seoulite should have a right to enjoy healthy and safe food. In the past 2 years, the city has hosted 259 times of multi-layered discussions with food experts, citizens, and government officials. And that's how we came up with a 5-year master plan for food. This is the 6 core values of the master plan: health, security, co-prosperity, community, ecology, and happiness. To create a healthy and safe food environment, we expand food security for citizens and vitalize co-prosperity and community and ecology, and we can also achieve the happy citizens throughout all these efforts. Based on the institutional foundation that harmonizes all of that, we have joined forces to create a sustainable food city, Seoul, where citizens of Seoul can be happy. So this is the direction of Seoul's new and strengthened expanded food policy of Seoul. There are 3 strategies. First, respond to diversifying climate crisis. We need to discover new policies. Second, in order to relieve anxiety about food, we have strengthened policies for preemptive responses that incorporate the latest information technologies such as big data. Third, in order to realize the basic food right of Seoul citizens, we expand the food security target from the vulnerable to the universal. Let me break the 5-year master plan into the field. The first is a health field to create a healthy and safe food environment. Seoul City provides customized nutritional management services to close the health gap for pregnant women, infants, and elderly who are fragile to be nutritional imbalance. We will conduct a nutritional evaluation of the subject, and based on that, we provide customized nutrition management. For supporting healthy diet, we cooperate with Food Habit the Support Center and the Public Health Centers of 25 boroughs of Seoul. We plan together and we will help infants and toddlers to understand the taste properly and educate students to build healthy eating habits, and we also provide healthy food experience programs for adults and provide education using accessible spaces to practice them. And data is becoming more important, so the food management also requires a scientific research approach based on data. So by building a database for substances that threaten food safety and building a system to analyze them, we will collect and monitor food based on that data, and we plan to prepare a system for food safety management. Now I'd like to talk about food security. Growing number of children and elderly are socially isolated due to COVID-19. And the picture on the left are the children who are eating fruits while studying. And the pictures on the right is an 80-year-old man who lives alone. He suffered from high blood pressure and diabetes. He just have instant ramen and noodles. Even though he had rice and other ingredients, he can cook them. So the Seoul City will visit them to provide relevant services. And we will also find out isolated and abandoned children to provide a better meal and healthy meal or meal card to support them an environment where they can eat anytime they want. And we will visit the citizens over 65 years old who has a high risk of nutritional imbalance. We will offer them the nutritional advice and some practical help. In order to guarantee universal nutrition as well as economically difficult subjects, we will expand eco-friendly free meals which were previously provided from elementary school to second year of high school to all students from the kindergarten to high schoolers from this year. In addition, we plan to provide food vouchers to purchase eco-friendly foods to low-income families, pregnant women to ensure sufficient nutrition. Single-person household accounts for 40% of population in Seoul, and single-person households range from young adults to middle-aged adults to senior citizens. In order to provide the necessary services for each target, we will prepare a food support service system along with a fact-finding survey. We will provide a package along with dietary education to train people to eat well on their own. Occasionally, we run a shared table program where people gather together to make food and talk to each other. In addition, we plan to operate a shared refrigerator that contains leftover food and ugly food and continue to promote the campaign to practice valuable food consumption. COVID-19, climate change, and earthquake sometimes interrupt the food supply and food chain, and people have insecurity about food. So the Seoul City is trying to come up with a solution in stages. The first stage will be the categorizing food crisis situation by disaster, and we will collect the food resources in the local community. And the second stage will create a response manual for crises such as infectious disease and climate crisis, so that we can provide the food stably to citizens. In the final stage of third, we plan to make the existing data information so that information can be easily received. And the third is co-prosperity and community. Sustainable future exists when the urban and rural area, people, environment work together. So Seoul City operates rural and city center to promote this concept. And Seoul and local government have signed an MOU to increase the consumption of eco-friendly meals. in the city center. And we also build a shared network in the local community for everyone to have an access to. To resolve their concerns about food, we will find an opportunity to take care about each other and cook together and eat together. The fourth is ecology. It's eco-friendly food consumption. The world we are living in is full of plastic. It's very convenient for people, but inconvenient for the planet. Seoul will reduce the use of plastic in food, increasing the number of stores without using plastic packaging, and we will launch a project that rent reusable cups at the cafe and washes it and reuse it. And we will reduce the food loss and help the ecological cycle through the upcycling of fresh food. Some fresh food that are still edible but wasted because its value is lowered, then Seoul will upcycle such food to take the lead in reducing food loss by reusing fresh food. We will educate and promote the global healthy diet for sustainable diet operation. We will teach everyone how to apply the planetary health diet shown on the screen and eat more fruits and vegetables. That is one important part of the planetary diet. And this diet also enhances the health of Seoul citizens as well as the health of the earth. Seoul will continue to make the city of Seoul a sustainable food city. Based on science, the 5-year master plan will be evaluated every year, and the result will be reflected on our policies. At the same time, we will evaluate interim execution and the overall assessment of the project to enhance the completion level of the project. This is the result of the governance between private and public. And in the future, we will strengthen our private-public governance to give you better support and better policies. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Yumi Park. And her presentation helped us to understand the 5-year master plan of Seoul City. Thank you very much. And now we'd like to move on to the first presentation. And this first presentation will be delivered by the Group Director Jacques Tofias of C40 Urban Climate Leadership. He will touch upon good food cities, the importance and opportunities of sustainable urban food system. He joined us online real time. Mr. Jacques Tofias, are you ready? Then please begin.
안녕하세요. Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you, Mayor O, Director Park, and the Seoul Metropolitan Government for the invitation to participate. I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen, Filippo? Yes or no? Yes, great, thank you. It's an honor to be sharing the platform with you and with the other distinguished participants. Where I need to start today is simply to note that we are, as everyone can see around them, in a climate emergency. We're also in a food systems crisis. 2 million people are obese, while 800 million people suffer from food insecurity. Food contributes 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions, and unlike in many other sectors, food emissions are accelerating in the wrong direction. Where I'm particularly excited is that this workshop is happening because it's wonderful to see your new 5-year master plan. From our work with cities, we know that there are many benefits in developing an integrated strategy. C40 knows this very well because we've been working with all of our cities to develop climate action plans. This allows coordinated action to address the issues with the urgency and strategic organization it requires. Like a climate action plan, having an integrated food strategy and a governance plan allows cities to create a structure for collaboration across different city agencies and departments, as well as centralized decision-making, enabling the alignment of actions such as procurement to deliver multiple co-benefits. It provides a platform for stakeholders to participate, for their voices to be heard and acted upon. It creates the opportunity to really understand all of the activities happening within the city and to identify the areas of greatest need. It makes your city more resilient. As we've seen with the pandemic, having the ability to centrally coordinate action is really an important tool that cities have. And having a well-developed integrated strategy empowers the city to act to deliver impact. At C40, we know that when it comes to food, there's an especially great opportunity for cities. Historically, when it comes to food systems, a lot of attention has been paid to improving production. What hasn't gotten as much attention until recently is that cities are centers of consumption. 70% of food is eaten in cities, and mayors are the only political leaders that are seriously tackling emissions from food consumption. The science is clear. We need to transform our food system. And as we heard from Director Park, cities are extremely well positioned to deliver the transformation necessary. The nexus between healthy diets and reducing emissions is something that C40 has been working on for many years. In 2019, we launched the Good Food Cities Declaration, which we are proud that Seoul is a signatory to, which captures C40's aim. Everyone has access to a planetary health diet within a decade. This is a science-based reference diet developed by our partners at EAT that is suitable for feeding 10 billion people in a way that's healthy for people and sustainable for the planet. The Good Food Cities Declaration calls for cities to take the following actions. It calls for them to align their food procurement to the planetary health diet. It calls for the improving of the food environment, making it easier to eat healthier and more plant-based options, making them the easier, more accessible option. It calls for halving food loss and waste, and it calls for the creation of the governance and strategies to achieve these goals. So how are we going to achieve that? First, we're going to do it by leveraging the billions of dollars that city governments spend on meals each year. For example, New York City alone spends over $500 million on food in schools, hospitals, and for the vulnerable. Mayors' food budgets and procurement powers can create and shape global markets. We know this because cities are actually doing it. Over the past 5 years, Milan has transformed its school menus towards the planetary health diet, replacing meat with plant protein and reducing its food emissions by 20%. By involving parents in these decisions, the changes are popular. So Milan is now expanding the program to universities and the private sector food providers. The city of Barcelona has also done similarly with over 100 kindergartens and is promoting a change across primary schools right now. Copenhagen has recently transformed their food procurement to put a climate weight into their purchasing decisions. The climate weight helps them make informed decisions on the carbon impact of which foods to purchase, and also an internal label to help city kitchen staff better understand the sustainability of the foods that they are preparing. In Stockholm, the city now has a digital tool to measure and track CO2 emissions from all food purchased by the city-owned operations. With this tool, it's also possible to monitor the amount of different meat and dairy products, as well as various vegetables that the city purchases. Cities are also changing the food environment. Barcelona is bringing changes to 40 public markets, where sustainable food is being strongly promoted to the annual 60 million visitors that come to the city each year. In Los Angeles, they're pursuing a goal of having all Angelenos living within a half mile of a fresh food outlet, and has refurbished and trained personnel in over 50 corner stores in underserved areas. These cities, of course, are wealthy cities. The challenges for cities in the global south is different, since they generally are not the source of high food consumption emissions. In their case, the opportunity is to improve nutrition while avoiding locking in higher carbon diets. In the Philippines, where diet-related disease is the leading cause of death, Quezon City in Manila is regulating healthier school meals and has banned junk food, not just in schools, but around them too. The national government is considering scaling this up to the whole country. Last year, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia created a school feeding program for the first time, taking responsibility back from international donors, ensuring local and nutritious food to school children. Now imagine the impact if we could replicate these examples of city leadership in all of the world's biggest cities. As we heard from Director Park, the other major problem that we want to fix is that 1/3 of food in wealthy cities is wasted, racking up emissions from landfill while people go hungry. Food waste from methane creates more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire global airline industry. As captured in the C40 Good Food Cities Declaration and in the SDG 12.3, C40's vision is to have food waste, capture and redirect usable leftover surplus food, and collect and compost the remainder so that no food at all is dumped in the landfill. Now we know that this is possible because Seoul is well on the way to doing it already. Thanks to your world-class pay-as-you-throw scheme, you have reduced food waste by 13%, and 95% of remaining food waste is now diverted from landfill. Many cities are now working on rescuing unsold food from big generators, such as markets and supermarkets, for donation. They're using surplus food to close the city meal gap. And cities that are doing this are Guadalajara, Lisbon, Philadelphia, and Curitiba. In Oslo, they've developed a policy where they recover and serve surplus food at food events. They serve it at a rescue food table. And I'm sure we'll hear more about it, but just last week, Milan won the world's biggest environmental prize, the inaugural Earthshot Prize from the Prince of Wales for their work on recovering and redistributing surplus food. And I'm sure that our friends from Milan will tell us more about it over the course of today's session. Another example is in Tokyo, who is now connecting municipalities and their disaster prevention stockpiled foods with food banks so that when the expiry date is approaching, the food in the disaster prevention stockpile doesn't go wasted. So we often get asked what cities can do. I've given a number of examples of some city good food practices, but the list of activities that cities can do to have an impact is very long. So to share a few additional thoughts, cities can utilize purchasing programs to shift demand and signal the markets of interest. They can show residents how delicious sustainable food is by serving it at schools and educating the students as well as their families about this opportunity. They can engage the private sector to make those actions that increase access. They can limit advertising, like London is doing on the Transport for London. And they can implement mandatory food waste collection and phase out food waste from disposal. Now, these efforts can be scaled. I just put this slide up because ideas that may be seen as visionary are becoming mainstream successes. And at C40, we very much look forward to celebrating and scaling Seoul's progress similarly. So in conclusion, I want to say that the world is paying attention to food systems. It finally feels like the tide is going with us, although as everything related to climate action, not nearly quickly enough. Earlier this year, for the first time, the UN came together to focus on food systems with all of its agencies. A week ago, Milan won the world's biggest environmental prize. Food is at the top of the global agenda, and cities are clearly leading the way. Cities are showing ambition, shifting towards the planetary health diet, halving food loss and waste, addressing hunger, poverty, climate change, and resilience. C40 is here to support you. Hamsa Amida. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. He joined us online and he delivered a very meaningful and insightful presentation. He highlighted the importance and the challenges and opportunities of a sustainable urban food system. Thank you once again. And now let's move on to the next presentation. The second presentation will be delivered by Director Ludzianin Alodamin, and she will touch upon dietary transition for better planet, environment, and citizens' health.
Good afternoon, Seoul. My name is Dr. Lujain Al-Kadmani. I'm the Director of Global Action at EAT. I'm pleased to be virtually here with you today to speak to you briefly about our EAT Lancet report. But before I do that, I just want to bring your attention to some of the current scientific reports that mention the impact of our current food systems, starting with a report that was published by the Postdem Climate Impact Research Institutes around the current consumption trends, which that if the current consumption trends continue in relation to the type of diet that is consumed and how we consume, the global food demand will increase by about 50% by 2050. That is, the demand for animal products like milk will more than double. And given that we already facing so many high rates of malnutrition, by 2050, it will be even more than that. We'll have more than 4 billion people could be overweight, 1.5 billion of them obese. And at the same time, undernutrition rates will continue. So we'll have 500 million people continue to be underweight. So with that increased numbers of malnutrition and the increased demand for food, we'll have increasing rates of food waste, and all of that combined together, which means that the environmental impact of our agricultural system and food system as a whole will spiral out of control. So what is the current status of our food systems? First, in relation to the malnutrition, which is the impact of our current diets. This is the from a global nutrition report that was published last year that stated now we have 1.9 billion adults that are overweight, and with that around 600 million of them are obese. But at the same time, 264 million women are affected by iron amenable anemia, which is a type of micronutrient deficiency, and 462 million adults are underweight. And if we see the situation of malnutrition among children, 38 million under the age of children under the age of 5 are overweight or obese, while 144 million are stunted. And from the environmental perspective, we see that the impact of food production actually contributes to more than thirds of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as it related to deaths from indoor productions, global beef production, as well as the emissions in relation to the health costs of malnutrition, such as obesity and non-communicable diseases. If we put that combined together, and we see from the economical perspective, actually the current costs of a broken food system is 12 trillion US dollars, and that is 2 trillion above its estimated annual net value generation. So it's actually is costing the world more than the benefit. And before I jump into the Eat Lancet, I just want to talk to you briefly about Eat, the organization that I work in. Eat is a non-profit organization, and it's actually a global platform, multi-stakeholder that is science-based, which is with one goal, which is transforming the global food system. So we convene, connect, curate, engage world leaders, policymakers, cities, businesses, people, and others to generate knowledge, to provide thought leadership, to co-create solution, and translate science into action initiatives and policies. So in order to do that, we work on 3 different areas. So we have the knowledge piece in order to close knowledge gaps, to synthesize science. We have the engagement piece, engaging with different stakeholders, different actors, as we cannot transform food systems without having everyone at the table. And action, which is translating knowledge into actions, solutions that can be translated into different policies and business practices, for example. And part of the knowledge chapter of our organization, we have launched the Eat Lancet Commission that has its report published back in 2019. So the EAT has partnered together with the Lancet to form a commission with around 39 world-leading experts to answer one question, which is how to feed people a healthy diet while staying within the planetary boundaries by 2050. Will that be even possible, as we're talking about feeding almost 9 billion people? And back then, there was no evidence-based answer to that. In addition, there was not a scientific targets for sustainable food systems that connects both health, sustainability. So the commission was put together for one goal, which is achieving planetary health diet for nearly 10 billion people by 2050. So the Eat Lancet Commission had around a couple of years to answer the following questions. First, define a healthy reference diet, what is based on the best available science, long-term cohort studies, randomized trials, other publications. What could be our healthy reference diets? Then define the planetary boundaries for sustainable food systems. What are the 6 key environmental system processes, the targets for greenhouse gas emissions, cropland use, water use, nitrogen phosphorus application, as well as extinction rate when it comes to biodiversity. And then apply a global food system modeling framework to analyze a combination of different measures that are needed to stay within the planetary boundaries while delivering a healthy diet by 2050. And then what could be the strategies that different decision makers, different policymakers need to do to meet those targets? So starting from the first target, which is the healthy diets from sustainable food systems, which what we call the planetary health diet. So what is the planetary health diet? So and if we see that the daily caloric intake of individuals is 2,500 calories, and the planetary health diet, if we imagine it as a plate, half of that plate will be fruits and vegetables, And the other half will be around a third of whole grain, plant-sourced proteins and legumes, and saturated fats. And there is still some room, a limited one, when we look at animal-sourced protein, dairy foods, starchy vegetables, and added sugar. And this is a referenced diet that is plant-rich, flexitarian, that is still see some room for animal-sourced food when we, so it can be translated into different cuisines and different cultures in different regions of the world. And this is the interpretation of the diet. So it's not one size that fits all, but actually can be interpreted to different plates in different regions, whether it's completely plant-based, like the picture over here, or it could be like there's still some room of animal-sourced food, as the picture here. And these pictures represent different cuisines from different parts of the world. And the planetary health diet also depends on the emissions of the food system in different regions. For example, if we look at the diet that is needed in North America or in the Western diet, in order to remain within the planetary boundaries, there needs to be a massive reduction in animal-sourced food as well as the dairy. While so the planetary health diet would need to be very, very limited amounts of animal-sourced foods. But if we look at the interpretation of planetary health diet in Africa, for example, there's still some room for an increase even in the animal-sourced food. However, there needs to be a massive decrease in starchy vegetables. The health benefits of that diet has been estimated to prevent more than 11 million premature adult deaths per year. And then the other targets, which is the sustainable food production, which is the planetary boundaries. We have set planetary boundaries based on the climate change. So we see in relation to the greenhouse gas emissions, land system change in relation to cropland use, fresh water use, so the water use for those food systems, the nitrogen application, the phosphorus application, as well as in relation to the biodiversity loss, the extinction rate. So those two targets in relation to the planetary boundaries and planetary health diets, they cannot be used alone in relation for sustainable food systems. So it's not that, so planetary health diets alone will not be able to transform those food systems, or neither the sustainable production practices in isolation. So actually what we need is a combined approach where there is a massive shift towards planetary health diets that is translated and applicable to different parts of the world. As we know, there's no one size that fits all. And there is a sustainable food production practices based on the planetary boundaries. And also the third approach, which is the halving the rates of food loss and waste by 2030. So a combined approach by the for the three principles: planetary health diet, sustainable production practices, and food waste, is what we're defining as a sustainable food system, and is the answer to the question which is feeding more than around 10 billion people a healthy diet without destroying our planet by 2050. And in order to do that, we have like 5 strategies. That was also a recommendation from the Eat Lancet. First, seeking international and national commitment for the shifts towards the healthy diets, which is unfortunately, we still lack strong political will when it comes to dietary shifts and sustainable food consumption. Second, to reorient agricultural priorities from producing high quantities of food to producing healthy food. Till this date, the question that the agriculture system always answer is to always produce more and more. But instead, we need to answer a question: is producing what? So from producing more to actually producing better. Then the third strategy, which is sustainably intensify food production to increase high quality output. So how can we feed the growing population and at the same time increase the quality of the output? Fourth, strong coordinated governance of land and ocean. And that's why we have adopted the Half Earth strategy, which is using the existing agricultural land to produce better and sustainably, rather than expanding the agricultural land and limiting the rates of deforestation, and as well as overfishing when it comes to ocean. Then strategy 5, which is halving food loss and waste, which is in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. Cities are already taking a great lead in the food systems agenda. And we can see that with the great work, the global networks such as the C40 Food System Network, as well as the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. And then when it comes to the Eat Lancet report, we have actually partnered together with the C40 to see what can cities do in relation to the Eat Lancet report and its recommendations, particularly in relation to the planetary health diets. So we have founded the Good Food Cities Declaration, which is a declaration or commitment that we ask cities to do to achieve the planetary health diets by 2030 by implementing the following measures. First, aligning their food procurement policies to the planetary health diets and support an overall increase of planetary health diet consumption by their citizens, reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030, and have a joint strategies with various stakeholders to ensure we end up with multi-stakeholder action. Until this date, we have around 14 cities who've joined that declaration, and we're happy to see that Seoul is one of those cities. And in total, that means that the around 500 meals served per year to be aligned with the planetary health diets. I'll stop there, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So she talked about the dietary transition for better planet environment. Continuing on, this will be the last presentation of session 1. And the last presentation will be delivered by Director General Filippo Garupano at the MUFPP. He will touch upon Milan Urban Food Policy Pact in the context of global food discourse. Mr. Director General, you are here joining us online. Are you ready? If you are ready, please begin.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you and with the other speaker. Also, let me thank Zachary for mentioning the Earthshot Prize. We are very excited about it. So, I would like to start giving you a quick overview of what the pact is and their members. before going more in depth in the global food agenda. We are still recovering from the organization of the 7th Global Forum that took place the past week in Barcelona. So during the gathering, we present this, let's say, the status of our membership. We have 217 mayors and cities that signed the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, and our mayor are representing a population of around 400 million people, and this is impressive because it's easy to understand the impact that the food policies can have on 400 million inhabitants. So mayors and also food policy officers have a great potential in their hands. And what we have been doing also in the Global Forum is making them let's say, aware of this. A quick round about the distribution among our region and the size of our cities. Our most populated region is Asia Pacific, with one of the lowest number of cities, 18, while the region with the highest number is Europe, with, let's say, middle-sized cities. We also welcomed in 2021, this year, 19 new signatory cities. And for Asia Pacific, also thanks to the contribution of Seoul that is serving in the steering committee, as Director Park mentioned before. We have the new signatory cities from Tokyo, Bangkok, Sydney, and Wellington. Okay, so about the knowledge that the Milan Pact cities share with one another, we organize the Milan Pact Awards. That is a joint program of the City of Milan and the Caripro Foundation, and since 2016 we have collected quite 400 food policy practices that have been submitted by our mayors. Those practices that are available on our website are, let's say, our living library of knowledge, in which cities can share and learn from each to another. And we base, let's say, this knowledge on, we use this knowledge creating exchange among cities, and also by bring the voice of cities and their best practices in the urban food agenda. So I think it's worth mentioning the great effort that the MUFB Secretariat in the organization of a plenary session at the United Nations Food System Pre-Summit that took place on the 28th of June this year. So the Secretariat generally taking into consideration just international organization and member states. So our session, City and Local Food System, was the only session aimed at showcasing the fundamental role of cities in transforming the food system. So we invited many stakeholders together with the the city of Milan with the Mayor Sala, that is the chair of the pact that opened the plenary session, the city of Bristol, Sao Paulo, the city of Seoul, that was, in particular, the city of Seoul was involved in, let's say, in the school meal roundtable with Mr. Kim Dae-young, the president of the Seoul Municipal Agency for School Meals. Then Addis Ababa, Copenhagen, and Quelimane. The idea was to showcase the role of cities and mayors in transforming the food system to member states and international organizations. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have just finished a very important moment for the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, that is our 7th Global Forum that took place in Barcelona next week. It was a very important moment of exchange and debate with our signatory cities, regional and global stakeholder. And also, let me also thank C40 and the IT Foundation because they were involved in the organization of some session, and also the city of Seoul as well. So the title, the issue of the 7th Global Forum was Growing Resilient, Sustainable Food to Tackle the Climate Emergency. So we two main during this global forum. The first one is the launch of the Barcelona Challenge for Good Food and Climate. As Zachary mentioned before me, over 70% of the world food production is consumed in cities. So local agri-food system is working on the agri-food system is essential for the climate action. Therefore, we decided to launch the Barcelona Challenge, drawing on the C40 Good Food Declaration and the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Framework for Action. Basically, it is a call for cities and their residents to engage in a series of commitments related to the transformation of the urban food system. The challenge presents a set of core metrics to help grasp the positive impact of this commitment, and it is focusing mainly on mitigation and adaptation. The promoters are the Barcelona City Council, the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, the C40, the Red de Ciudades por la Agroecología, Terra and Wheels, and Sustainable Food Places. So cities from all around the world can join the Barcelona Challenge until March 2022. And to do so, they must record, let's say, their action that they are already developing or planning to develop until 2030. If you go on the website of the Barcelona Challenge, you can easily understand how it works and find also a useful toolkit for cities. I think that it is a great tool to showcase the impact of urban food policies in tackling the climate emergency within, let's say, their own cities and as a whole towards the international community. So if you are interested to join, just reach the Secretariat out. Finally, during the closing remarks of the mayors that joined the 7th Global Forum, we decided per consensus to adopt a resolution on that calls on member states to work closely together with cities to transforming the food system. This declaration will be brought to the COP26 in Glasgow next week by the mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, that was our host this year. So more has to come about the 7th Global Forum and materials and information on our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He shared his valuable experiences with us. Once again, thank you for taking your time out to take part in this event. Now it's time to have an in-depth discussion, and we will have the panel discussion for the session 1. And the moderator of this panel discussion will be Professor Cho-il Kim at the Seoul National University. One quick announcement. Who just joined us to deliver the welcoming speech and the presentation, Ms. Yumi Park, the director of this department, can't be here, but on behalf of Seoul City government, Ms. Jin-suk Jeon will be here with us. Thank you, Manager Chun. So from now on, we have many experts who will have in-depth discussion. So I'd like to hand over my microphone to moderator Cho-il Kim.
Thank you. My name is Kim Cho-il, moderator for the first debate session, discussion session. And I'd like to thank all the speakers, especially Director Zafias and Filippo. Thank you so much.
Another half an hour or so just for our discussion. Thank you. 지금부터 토론자 발표가 있겠습니다. 토론자
So now I'd like to welcome our speakers. So I'd like to welcome the first speaker, Mr. Lee Sang-yun. He will talk about the food and the health of the public citizens.
네, 안녕하십니까. 소개받은
Hello everyone, I am Sang-yun Yoon. This era will be recorded as the time of crisis. You may consider that is because we have COVID-19. That is clearly true. But actually we are facing many more serious crises than pandemic. First is inequality, and the second is climate crisis. If this trend continues, then human beings would not be sustainable. Many are highly susceptible and doubt about that. To respond to these crises, we have to make a dietary transition, and many are recognizing the importance of a dietary transition. And in the context, the role of cities, in particular Seoul in Korea, is really getting more attention. I am believing this is really timely to have this kind of a conference, given all the background. And today I'd like to talk about what aspect is very important in the Korea's 5-year master plan and what area should be enhanced. Many want to know this fact but compared to Seoul's or Korea's status to the global status, the public health outcome in Korea is pretty good. The prevalence, death rate, and some other nutritional balance, the Korean people are healthier than others based on the index and values numbers. If you look at the obese rate, we are the second lowest after Japan in the obesity rate among OECD member countries. And also our prevalence of adult disease like diabetes and cardiovascular is not that high, so Korea is faring well in terms of public health care. However, Related to the food and food system, we cannot say that Korea is fairly doing well. Even though this data is limited to the certain data and researches, there was actually a reference diet released by Eat and Janssen Commission. Compared to that reference, youth and young children's diet habits are very poorer than the reference data. And even though you are looking at the diet of adults in Korea, we are taking much more intake of the animal-based food compared to the reference. So if you look into the nutrition, we are not that in a good position. What is all the more important is inequality. The public health status, to understand better about the public health status, we have to focus on the health inequality. We have so many different socio-economic inequalities, and we also see the health inequality. And the biggest drivers to health inequalities are the food and food system. So the socio-economic and health inequality should be resolved. And the first approach to resolve that issue is food system transition. But if you focused only on the Korean Peninsula, what is more serious is food production system. The Korean agriculture shows a very low self-sufficient rate, so we are heavily dependent on the agricultural produce the imports. And the Korean agricultural practices are heavily dependent on the agricultural chemicals and pesticides. And these days, many are working hard to promote organic farming, but the pesticides and the chemicals are still heavily used. We're still far away from the agricultural practices that is not or less using the pesticides. Then, based on that, what is more urgent is to reduce inequality and promote and encourage many more organic options. That's the direction that we have to change our urban food system. What is unfortunate is that Seoul City is having good plans, and that plan is strongly based on private and public governance. Despite of that good plan, even though the city is making efforts to achieve that, we do not have many options out there. What I mean is that there are not many healthy and sustainable food produced organically. So not only the role of the city, but also the role of agriculture is really critical. Seoul City should take the leading role to make an agricultural transition to the organic way.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And I'd like to welcome the second presenter and second panelist. Is working as a campaigner for Greenpeace. Mr. Lee Chang-pyo will talk about in the era of climate change, how can we build a healthy food system. Nice to meet you. I'm Lee Chang-pyo. When it comes to food, I'd like to talk about Korean agriculture. As researcher Mr. Lee mentioned before, that the food self-sufficiency ratio is very low. It's on brink, standing on a brink. Last year, the food self-sufficiency was about 20%. So it means about 78% of the foods are coming from outside. And also the farming chemicals and fertilizers are used tenfold higher compared to other countries around the world, which causes land degradation. So without fertilizer, we can't produce foods anymore almost. It's like that situation. And also the agriculture subsidy is low compared to the production value. It's about 6.7% compared to the whole agriculture value. So if I compare this value to Switzerland, our ratio is very low. Korea has a high dependency in importing agriculture products. However, our subsidy ratio is way low. So against this backdrop, of course, climate change is not something we have to consider only in Korea, but it's a global problem. So we have to think about if this current food supply system can be sustainable because the climate change is impacting the whole world. So the whole world has to transform the system, their system. But if the countries, the governments are providing their own foods, and of course, if the climate change issues further rise up, then they are going to try to secure their own food first. So if the climate change becomes more serious, I wonder if the current global food supply system can be sustainable. Last year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, rice and wheat exporters halted their export to provide their food to their citizens first. So that has affected the price of crops. And North Americans have suffered from climate issues like drought and floods. And then also that has caused fluctuations of wheat prices. So I can foresee that we will see a shortage of crops. So against this backdrop, and unfortunately, we're seeing that Korean farmers are giving up their farming because the subsidy is not enough, and also the environment is not friendly for them to continue to produce. Then it's going to disrupt the whole food supply chain. So for us to build a sustainable food system, then we have to support farmers. We need to restore the farming community so that we can live win-win co-prosperity, achieve co-prosperity between rural and urban areas. We have to think from the perspectives of food providers. So we need to secure a system so that food providers are willing to provide foods. We need to make a platform where the providers and the consumers can meet together, and we also need to shorten the distribution channels. We need to shorten the channels, cut down the channels, so that we can provide a simple food distribution channels between the providers and the consumers. And then that is my presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Last but not least, I'd like to welcome Professor Hwang Ji-yoon. She's teaching at the Department of Food and Nutrition of Sangmyeong University.
Greetings, I am Ji-yoon Hwang at Sangmyeong University. As many discussants shared many good informations, and I will be very brief to share the challenges and tasks that we have to do. To produce sustainable food, we have to respond to climate change. At the same time, we have to produce qualitative and quantitative food. It is easy to say, but easier said than done. And it is very the ambitious goals. So if you look at the SDG goals suggested by SDG, the 3 goals are related to the food system. Just like that, the Seoul City has come up with a 5-year food master plan to come up with these kind of goals and visions. As two other discussants said that we are having the campaign to have a planetary health diet at the city level. That is one of the action plan. We have the policies, the action plans in the future will help those visions and the targets will be achieved. That is the task that we have to achieve in the future. However, as you are well aware, no matter how good the policy there is, if the citizens would not act them out, then it is unattainable. So the planetary health diets are the key word of today. And we have some food bicycle or some other many the guidelines released by the association or the government agency. All those kind of supporting materials should be coordinated with other various stakeholders. We have to promote it efficiently. We have to educate and train the citizens as well. At the same time, people with a higher level of income, it may be a little bit easier. However, when it comes to sustainable diet, it is more difficult to realize these kind of policies with the people with a lower level of incomes. For them to make an informed decision, we have to have some differentiated policies and approaches for them. To do so, we have to have a very realistic food policy and food support policy and nutrition policy, which will well reflecting the opinions of the people who will implement it out. That's it, and thank you very much, Professor Huang. So there will be session 2 after this panel discussion. So we just have 10 minutes to go for this panel discussion. So we have many speakers, and we received a couple of questions to the speakers. So I'd like to ask these questions to the speakers first. The first question goes to Director Yumi Park. On behalf of her, Ms. Jin-Suk Jung is here, so she will be able to answer the question. Seoul City said that they are having the policies to support the healthy food for single household. What is the policy in detail? Hello, I am responsible for the food policy team. 40% of Seoul citizens are single household. They are living alone, so they don't care about their nutritional balance. It's not easy for them to take a balanced diet. So, based on such understanding, Seoul first to find out the vulnerable group, and then we provide direct nutritional support with tangible foods. And for single household who are able to cook themselves, we will help them enhance or improve their diet habits. So we have various different projects, and we will continue carrying on such kind of campaigns.
Thank you. We have several questions, and I'd like to pick one. And the next question goes to Mr. Japius. I'd like to ask you, C40 has built a platform to tackle the climate change. So to reduce the climate change, that I understand that you have built a platform, but do you have any other efforts that you can introduce? And that is the first question going for Mr. Zachary Tofias. And also, can you please share with us any carbon tax?
Those are great questions. I'm not sure, were they specifically about food systems? I've not heard a suggestion for a carbon tax on food systems. I will say that as an organization, we very much are trying to make it easier for people to eat more sustainable food. And I think that the efforts that we've heard discussed today, and we can certainly share more examples, I direct any of your viewers to look at the C40 Knowledge Hub, which is c40knowledgehub.org. Has many great examples of the actions that cities are doing to make it easier to eat more sustainable food. I think that the examples that we've heard today are just some of the good practices, but there are many other types of activities that cities are doing to really incentivize and enable the ability for making choices that are the easier and cheaper option to eat more sustainably. But it's an interesting idea. If someone has information about the carbon tax, we'd love to see that. I'd also say that in terms of other activities that are happening, C40 is working on issues ranging from transportation and buildings through resilience. But most of the efforts that we are focusing on is on the consumption of food systems as a means to incentivize and encourage the better production of food. We know that they are connected, but because the engagement that we have is with cities as these centers of consumption, that's where we're focusing.
고맙습니다.
Thank you. The panelists and discussants are joining here with us, and I know that they have questions to ask. But however, I'd like to ask questions. I'd like to get the questions from our audiences. And this question goes to Mr. Filippo. There are discussions, global agenda on UN summit and other global summits. But I'd like to ask, what are the urgent issues that we need to focus? What are the urgent issues that we need to focus? Mr. Filippo, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in my opinion, we should starting by being aware of the leverage that cities, mayors have to have, say, the greatest impact possible on the food system. And well, the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Framework for Action is focused on, let's say, has an holistic approach on the food system. So it starts from governance to sustainable diets to food supply and until let's say food waste. However, I think that we need to focus as much as we can on public procurement. For example, we have a very important. Many cities have a very important driver that is school meals. So public procurement, in my opinion, is one topic that we should advance as quick as possible, and also the food waste reduction. Let me also mention that the next global forum will take place. The 8th global forum will take place in Rio de Janeiro in 1 year, more or less, and the theme, the issue of this meeting will be again the nexus with food and climate. So these two examples that I mentioned will be discussed and presented at the next global forum. Finally, let me say also that for all the signatory cities that we are quite ready to launch at the beginning of the next year the new call of the Milan Pact Awards, and there will be a special focus on food and climate. Thank you.
고맙습니다.
Thank you.
이 토론자분들 중에서 발표자께 질문하실 분이 계실까요?
So any of discussants have
네,
Any of discussant have a question to the speakers? It seems no. Then I'd like to cover one more question from the floor. It goes to Mr. Filippo Gavano. You just briefly mentioned about the Barcelona challenge. You said we can find many toolkits for the cities can use at website. What kind of toolkit do you mean? Can you elaborate what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the Barcelona challenge was open to a core group of cities that could be members of the C40 and the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. After the launch during the 7th Global Forum, the challenge is open to all cities that want to commit their food policies. About the tool, you will find in the website of the Barcelona challenge an easy way, let's say, to complete the process to sign and to commit. As I mentioned, I think it's possible to join until March 2022, and when you basically you can choose among the different there are a list of different commitments clustered, let's say, in the 6th category of for the framework of action of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, and the city, depending on their priorities, can choose some of them of those commitments and add some, let's say, data about their food system and let's say that this is very useful to showcase the impact of food policies, both towards your citizens, let's say, and at the same time, as a whole, as a community of cities that join the challenge towards the international community, because we need we take it for granted, but we need every day to showcase to member states, to states, and to the international community how important is involving our mayor if we really want to achieve the SDGs in less than 10 years. Thank you.
고맙습니다.
Thank you.
지금 시간이 거의 다 됐는데요. 아주 간단한 질문 하나만 디렉터 토피아스께 드리고자 합니다. 지금 C40에서 제시한 목표가 굉장히 도전적입니다.
The C40
멤버이기 때문에 그 목표를 달성하기 위해서 열심히 노력하고
you have very high goals of C40, but I'd want to ask you, Mr. Tofias, within 10 years, do you think we can achieve your goals? You have an ambitious goal. Can we achieve that goal in 10 years?
I think that I have so much confidence that we will achieve these goals, and meetings like today show that it is possible. We know from Milan's example that they've reduced emissions over the past 5 years by 20%. So this is not unattainable. I think that what we need to do is we need to act with urgency, and meetings like today show that it is happening. I think that we'll hear more from our friends our other friends from Milan, a bit more about the food hub policy that show how you can recover food and deliver surplus food and deliver it to people in need. All of these things are possible. I think that we need to work with more urgency, but I think that this year of all years, we had the UN Food Systems Summit. We have COP26 happening starting in a week. These are things that will show the level of seriousness. But I think that the solution here is that cities are acting. So I have enormous optimism that people understand the opportunity and the urgency. And we don't have the time to waste. We don't have the time to wait. So action is now. So a meeting like today that shows Seoul's 5-year strategy, 5-year plan, we're here to help make it work because we need it to work.
고맙습니다. Action is now라는 말이 아주
Your comment "action is now" is really impressive. And I think that's a conclusion of this session 1. And we had the 5-year master plan of Seoul City delivered by Director Yumi Park. Regarding that, we released the reference diet for the Korean people earlier this year. If Seoul citizens stick to those guidelines, then as Director Topias mentioned, we will achieve that ambitious goal. Definitely. Last but not least, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to all the participants and discussants. Thank you very much. And many are joining us to give a big hand for concluding this session 1. And once again, thank you everyone for your dedication for this session 1. This is the era of a climate crisis. And to respond better to the crisis, we need to transform the food system. And I think it is really valuable time to discuss about how we can achieve such kind of transportation. Now, we'd like to jump into the session 2, which will be the case studies about ecological city transformation through food resource recycling. Before we begin with, we'd like to have a short
되는 그곳, 나 그곳이 될게. 아무것도 놓을 수 없어서 삶이 버거울 때 꼭 네 곁이 될게. I love a soul, 희망을 내 곁에 둘게. 너의 눈을 보고 너의 걸음에 맞춰서 너롭게 할게. I love a soul, 이 사랑 받을 수 있게. 난 노래할 수 있게. 그럼 해볼게. Oh soul, 그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해. 너는 기대해. 행복해질 테니까. Oh soul, 그래 나 이곳에서 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고 안을게. Yeah, yeah. 하루하루가 힘든 내게 주고픈 게 많아. 나 잊지 않을게. 하나하나 돌려줄 거야. 네가 내게 줬던 그 믿음만큼은. I love a soul, 희망을 내 곁에 둘게. 너의 눈을 보고 너의 걸음에 맞춰서 너롭게 할게. I love a soul, 이 사랑 받을 수 있게. 날 노래할 수 있게. 그럼 내가 될게. Oh soul, 그래 너 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해. 너는 기대해. 행복해질 테니까. Oh soul, 그래 나 이곳에서 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고
늦은
안을게.
밤 승복하던 너의 한숨 소리가 이 거리에 퍼질 때 너무나 지쳐버려. 작은 바람에도 네 심장이 부서질 때 I'll buy your side forever. I'll by your side forever. 나는 이것을 위해서 너를 느낄 수 있어. I saw you 너와 내 사이에서.
Oh soul, 그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해. 기대해. 행복해질 테니까. Oh soul, 그래 나 이곳에서 나 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고 안을게. 내 그곳이 될게 아무것도 놓을 수 없어서 삶이 버거울 때 꼭 네 곁이 될게 I love you so 희망을 내 곁에 둘게 너의 눈을 보고 너의 걸음에 맞춰서 널 웃게 할게 I love you so 이 사랑 받을 수 있게 널 노래할 수 있게 그럼 내버릴게 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해 너는 기대해 행복해질 테니까 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고 안을게 Yeah yeah No 하루하루가 힘든 내게 주고픈 게 많아 나 잊지 않을게 하나하나 돌려줄 거야 네가 내게 줬던 그 믿음만큼은 I love you so 희망을 내 곁에 둘게 너의 눈을 보고 너의 걸음에 맞춰서 널 웃게 할게 I love you so 이 사랑 받을 수 있게 날 노래할 수 있게 그럼 내가 될게 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해 너는 기대해 행복해질 테니까 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고
늦은
안을게
밤 승복하던 너의 한숨 소리가 이 거리에 퍼질 때 너무나 지쳐버려 작은 바람에도 네 심장이 부서질 때 I'll by your side forever I'll by your side forever 나는 이것을 위해서 너를 느낄 수 있어 I saw you 너와 내 사이에서
Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해 기대해 행복해질 테니까 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 나 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고 안을게
This is Seoul 2021 Seoul International Conference on Urban Food. Welcome back to session 2 of Seoul 2021 International Conference on Urban Food. We discussed about how to build sustainable and healthy food system in the era of a climate crisis. And now in the session 2, we'd like to discuss ecological city transformation cases through food resource recycling. To begin with, I'd like to introduce you the speakers for the second session. First of all, the first two speakers join us virtually. Mr. Andrea Margarini, the food policy of the city of Milan. He joined us online real time. Thank you. And the second speaker is Director Sherry Milu, the city food policy in UK. Thank you for being here out of your busy schedule. And we have many the experts on the site. Please join me to welcome them. The moderator of the second session is Professor Hyungkyu Kim at Korea University. Please welcome him. And we have first discussant Chong-sun Kim, Citizens Committee for Food. Please welcome her with a big hand. Last but not least, we have Soo-yeol Hong, the director of Resource Recycle Socio-Economic Research Center. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think it is very the timely session. Please be here with us until the very last moment. Then we'd like to begin the second session. The first presentation will be delivered by Director General Andrea Margani of Food Policy of the City of Milan. He will touch upon the case study of Milan in preventing food waste and GHG reduction. Mr. Andrea Margarini, are you ready?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
네, 바로 발표를 시작해 주십시오. Please begin.
Yes. 1 second that I share my screen. I think that it works. I hope that it works. So thank you very much again for having me. I'm here to share some concrete example on how Milan are working against food waste. Our city delivered a food policy, approved a food policy in 2015 during the World Expo about feeding the planet that we hosted in that year. And since that period, we started working hard on preventing food waste, redistributing and promoting circular economy for food. We start by studying our local food system that is very interconnected and intertwined with the different stages of the global food system. So from one side, we are producing local food, as well we are importing from our national market as well international one. And then everything concerning transformation, logistics, distribution, consumption and waste. And for each of these stages of our food system, we try to assume our system as a circle, not as a chain from producer to consumer, but as a system very interconnected. We try to understand at that period all the different policies, all the different actions that was organized by the municipality. Also in that period, and try to connect each other in a proper way. And when we work with our city council to approve a food policy, food waste was one of the priority that our city council decided to address. Together with also other priorities like public procurement of school canteens, as already mentioned in the previous session, as a promotion of local agriculture and other. But today I want to show you more in detail our food waste approach. We started by discovering that in the different stage of the food system, what are the main food losses. So all the parts that are completable, edible, that are also easy to share with people in need. And we decided to focus our attention on distribution because it's the economic bodies that can be better than other be redistributed. And working with in this way, we start also engaging all of our actors in Milan in a format, in an innovative format named Community of Practice, in which the municipality launch a topic. So our question regarding how we can reduce food waste in the different stages of our food system. We engage associations, stakeholders, shareholders, public companies, researchers, and everybody that can have a concrete contribution to reducing food waste. And we asking them their solution. We connect all of these energies, all of these knowledge in a proper way, and also is a moment in which our city officers, our directors, our deputy mayors, our mayors himself can have a direct feedback with a citizen on this specific topic. And we are working with this community of practices year by year, and food waste is one of the topics that we share all the time. And we also try to starting to boost innovative action in our municipal food services. The city of Milan nowadays have the total control of the school canteen system that nowadays produce 85,000 meals per day. And as you can imagine, we have a lot quantity of food waste, but a part of them is a surplus, is perfect edible. So we work with local association to connect directly for the needs of people in need. So with all the charities, with all the NGOs. And we are now active in more or less 25% of all of our school canteens by saving 140 tons of fruit and vegetable per year. As well in the wholesale market, another municipal service. Both are managed by a municipal agency, and here we have a huge quantity of fruit and vegetable that can be redistributed. And as you can see also, we are more than 10 times the quantity of donation that we are able to do in the school canteens. Another action that we deliver directly engage citizens and more in detail youth, children, are the doggy bags. So is a simple element, a bag, a plastic bag, reusable, in which the children can take their leftover and to take out their home. Is an element in which we are also speaking about food waste with the children, because otherwise, as you can imagine, with the donation, the children doesn't see the donation, doesn't see that are people that go in the kitchen to take the food losses and to put to other people. But with this bag, the children become more aware, and also the teachers establish educational narrative directly with them. And then we move to one of our driver as policy officer, as municipality, so the taxation, the fiscal incentives. We introduce a waste tax reduction for the companies that are donating food losses, and we discover that there are a lot of actors that want to donate in the private sector. So retailers, for instance, private canteens, so company canteens, as well retailers and traders from the wholesale market. And with this waste tax reduction, the main goal that we were able to achieve is a big map of all the actors that are in the process of donating food losses and waste. And here you can see about 50 retailers on 6 different food companies, 5 big retailers, 106 school canteens, as well 7 pilot small retailers. But more important again is map all of them, because by understand their position, we establish these local food waste hubs. Is the initiative in which we receive the Earthshot Prize by the Prince William and by the Royal Foundation. We are very proud because just one week ago we have in our hand the prize, and it's also a huge recognition of all the effort of the municipality and all our partner in the cities. And speaking about the partner, in this slide you can see different logo that are our partners, so all the retailers, all of the canteens in the private companies, as well as some donators, and in the coordination together with the municipality, there is a university, there is a union of company that is there are 3 different food banks, as well an important local foundation that act as grant maker. Together with all of these actors, we establish this system of local food waste hub. Nowadays, we have 3 local food waste hub already ongoing and 2 in process of definition. The model is very simple. We connect different retailers, more or less 11, from 10 to 20, more or less, per each hub. to a space that is owned by the municipality. There is a van that in all the morning go directly with a specific logistic line to recover all the losses of the day before and go to stock in the local food waste hub. In the afternoon, the same van go to the canteens of the private sector to recover all the food losses and to put directly to the soup kitchen. And at the time, in the afternoon, also all the charities go in the hub to take their needs, what they need. It's important because, as you can have in your mind, if there are food losses in a supermarket, in a retailer, of a huge quantity of one specific kind of food, salad, for instance, we cannot share salad to all in a unique way. But in the hub, we can play as a mix of the different products. So also the quality of the food that we deliver to the people is much more better. It's also important, this project, because with the huge contribution of the university here in Milan, named Politecnico of Milan, we were able to also to monitor all the losses month per month. Working with two sides. From one side, monitoring the quantity of food that are stocked in the hub daily. And on the other side, by also asking to the different retailers the quantity that they are producing. So we have two different approaches to see the same data, and works very well, because at the end we were able to see also the percentage of donation on the total of surplus, and in our hub this percentage is about 30%, while at the national level we have an average of 9%, so 3 times. As well in the number of kilograms that are donated and also monitored. It's important because in this way we also shared this data in a community of practice with the different retailers and see also the different kind of food that are donating. A system in which we put all of our effort on reducing food losses is the wild strategy of circular economy. And here you can have a snapshot of our fluxes. So in the total of the bio-waste that we are collected from the city, we have also a lot of food waste, and the total is here. And with a private plan, we manage all of these. We treat all of our bio-waste in a compost, CO2 for industry, biomethane, and also electrical energy. And together with all of our partners, we are also able to save the food waste before to become waste, so in the stage in which they are only losses, and to donate, and also to come back to the city. I think that we can do a lot as a municipality to promote circular economy and to save all the edible food losses for two main reasons, because they are good for the planet and also good for the people. Thanks for inviting me. I stay here with you connected, and also a photo family, a photo opportunity with all of our staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Andrea Magani. Thank you for sharing your valuable experiences. Let's move on to the second presentation. The second presentation will be delivered by Ms. Shelley Milou, the advisor to City Food Policy in UK. She joined us online as well. She will touch upon international partner to strengthen political will for healthier and sustainable urban food policy. So, Advisor Milou, please begin if you are ready.
Hi, and once again, thank you for inviting myself. I'm just going to try and get to the right slide. So yes, today I'm going to talk about the importance of international partnerships, and it's such a pleasure to follow Andrea, because it's the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and Andrea and his team that have provided such incredible inspiration for us here in the UK. So I'm based in a city called Birmingham, and we are currently partnering with a number of cities. And what I'm going to do is describe a case study of a partnership which shows how the international partnerships itself have galvanized interest at the senior leadership and political level. And that's what we have been requiring to secure commitment for food system transformation. So just a little bit about me. My background is as a public health nutritionist, and I've been working in the area for nearly 2 decades. And I've been recruited by city authorities to advise them on their food strategy. And I work for the Food Foundation as well, which is an independent think tank based in London in the UK. So we signed in Birmingham, we signed up to the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact when it was launched in 2015. And in 2016, we've attended all of the meetings. In 2016, we attended the forum in Rome, and a partner from an African city said that she felt that transforming food systems was only possible if we started working together. So I suggested to colleagues that perhaps because we in Birmingham are an international city, we have a lot of diaspora communities, we could reach out to a city and establish a partnership. The city that we chose through the support of the UK government was a city in India called Pune. So there's a map of the world, well, part of the world there. We are based in the center of the UK, and Pune is in the state of Maharashtra, which is where Mumbai is based. And from a nutrition point of view, what's really interesting is that we know that the dual burden, i.e. both obesity and undernutrition, are existing at the same time and rising all over the world. And our vision was to share the issues and the problems that we in the UK are facing, where 1 in 4 children aged 11 are obese, and 2 in 3 adults are obese or overweight, and share the kind of policy positions that we could potentially take to prevent the growth of obesity and to encourage healthier diets. And so our aim was to share this information to prevent things in India and elsewhere from escalating. So the city in Pune was the city of Pune was very excited to be involved, and we organized exchanges between both countries, and we also compiled evidence. So for the city of Pune, for Birmingham, and we put together a kind of like a booklet of case studies, which include cities like Milan. They also include Johannesburg and Copenhagen. Copenhagen is in Europe and has managed to achieve nearly 90% organic public sector procurement and is moving towards a plant-based diet, to show what cities that put their kind of mind to it and really, I guess like Seoul is doing, what they can really achieve. The other thing we did, which was key to the momentum that we achieved, was link it into the smart city agenda. So smart cities are about the fact that cities are growing rapidly. More people in the world want to live in cities. And so city authorities are thinking about how to develop their city, and key topics to focus on are things like water, transport, energy, healthcare, but food was never really a feature. So in India, for example, the Indian government have set up a smart cities mission. In the UK, we had some loose alliances that were trying to encourage cities to think about their digital future, but food was never really mentioned. But in Birmingham, we managed to set up partnerships with organizations to start talking about how food could be a feature of smart cities, and we did that similarly in India. So I'm going to move ahead. So about 5 years, I'd say, 5 years later, the partnership has done really well between the two cities, and we secured additional funding from UK aid from the government to expand the partnership to involve more cities in Asia and Africa that are part of the Commonwealth, but also beyond, because the city of Birmingham is hosting the Commonwealth Games next year. And the idea is, wouldn't it be great to involve these cities in the Commonwealth Games meeting and to host a meeting where we can discuss food systems? The other notable thing is that many of the networks, including the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, haven't managed to engage as many cities in Asia and Africa, although there are incredible efforts being made, and it is still the most best and diverse network of its type in the world. So we thought that there was a gap there that we could fill. So just at the start of the year, we launched a new project called Food Cities 2022 to start attracting cities that were interested in, but didn't have the experience of developing food policy, because a lot of the people with the power to make change happen don't have the expertise. And we set up some initial steps. So we would say the initial step is obviously securing political commitment at the local authority or the municipal level. And then, as Andrea described in his presentation, engaging stakeholders and actors. So in that particular presentation, the food policy action, which was waste, was described in detail, and actors that were relevant to that food policy action were described also. At the beginning of a city's journey towards establishing a food policy, the key thing is making sure that a range of policy officers, because food touches a range of departments, and a range of stakeholders from citizens to businesses, to food producers and distributors are involved in conversation. Another key learning that we actually got from the Milan Pact, and that's what we focus on in the case study document, is how to execute citizen engagement effectively. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how Pune did this shortly. We find that signing up to the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, I feel like I'm doing a sales pitch for my colleagues here, is one of the greatest things to ensuring that that movement continues. Also because there are annual meetings and opportunities to meet with other cities who may share the same concerns as yourself. And then from that, we can then start discussing pilot initiatives. So what are the key initiatives that are going to be prioritized by your city? In Pune's case, there's a massive urban food system project that's now being implemented, that's been funded by the World Bank as a result of this partnership. The Indian government has also launched a national program, which started off as a result of this partnership, called Eat Smart, and I'll describe that shortly. In the UK, we in Birmingham, for example, are taking part in a national program for cities where we're piloting obesity interventions. And we're also part of a European program called Food Trails, where we're considering now what are the most important pilot actions to implement in relation to 4 topics which relate to the EU Food 2030 strategy. So I'll talk about that later. So what I wanted to discuss is how Pune implemented their citizen engagement activity. So Pune itself is an incredible smart city and has managed to engage at least half of its 3 million population in visioning for the city. So in providing the local authority with guidance on what the focus of the local authority should be to make their lives better and happier. So we knew that they would have great expertise in how to engage citizens, and they carried out a household food survey in order to assess the drivers of food choice. So amongst low socioeconomic groups, you can see what the key drivers are: price, taste, quality, and then comes health. Amongst higher socioeconomic groups, health is the highest driver, but key there at the bottom is also brand. And that relates to the fact that the food environments are changing rapidly. There are so many new and global businesses that are transforming our food environments, and also not just influencing the choice of the high economic groups, but having an impact on what lower economic groups are doing as well. They also asked the citizens through the survey what actions they need to take. And citizens do believe that authorities need to take bold action when it comes to supporting them to make healthier and sustainable food choices, especially out of the home. So there are details here about what that relates to, including in relation to fruit and vegetables. So for example, they want to see non-profit shops selling direct from farmers. Street food, so as well as making street food safer, They want more promotions of healthier street food, and they also want a ban on advertising of junk food on TVs and hoardings, and a tighter licensing system. And in relation to public programs, so India has a national food support program. So for example, at lunchtime, all children have access to meals. They want to see more diversity in those meals. They want support from employers and better canteens, and they want tastier, like they call you get rations to take home from nurseries. They want tastier rations to take home. So we also, because we got the opportunity to present to policymakers, so we highlighted what the 6 top policy options were. And so you can see them here. This includes more teaching about healthy eating in the curriculum, as we discussed, more affordable fruit and veg, and in addition, banning of unhealthy street food, which I think would be quite challenging. But it's interesting to hear that that's coming from the citizens. So Pune, being quite a progressive city, rapidly secured funding to transform its urban food system. And they've started a program which focuses on 3 key areas. So building safe food systems, improving the nutritional status of Pune citizens, and forging stronger rural-urban links. And they're doing it through a variety of initiatives. And one of the most exciting, I think, has to be the weekly farmers markets. I did have the opportunity to visit one, and it was incredible to see farmers from the state, from outside the city, providing exceptional quality food. And as many of you know, there's a farming crisis globally. And so this also provides resilience to livelihoods. So when you consider the population of the city and the ability to set up infrastructure to support farmers, that's really such a great and wonderful rural-urban initiative. They also have mentioned meat here, which you don't get to hear as much in Europe because we're trying to move towards a plant-based diet. But this is still a very important aspect of the food system. And so upgrading of abattoirs and improving the goat meat value chain is going to be an initiative on this. And interestingly, that's also a focus in a couple of the African cities that we are now engaging with. So going back to the original couple of slides, I just wanted to show how the kind of experience of Pune really inspired Birmingham to do the same. So Birmingham in Europe, for us to carry out a detailed household food survey is very, very expensive. So we have to explore different methods of citizen engagement. The UK government launched the National Food Strategy, and because of this experience, launched the National Food Conversation in Birmingham. So they started organising food focus groups, which were rolled out across the country. And we've been slower to implement interventions because for us, it's quite a long process, the kind of consulting citizens and then launching strategies. But we are now at the stage where a draft strategy has been launched. And I thought I'd just put up what the ambition of this is. I really like in the Seoul food strategy that that happy is mentioned. Here we mention affordable, healthy and sustainable diet, and a city where food is celebrated and enjoyed by all. So the strategy is very complex and it covers all of the areas that have been mentioned, I'm sure, elsewhere, and that Andrea mentions in his initial slide. And we are expecting to go out to consultation at the start of the year. And so then we're also using opportunities like food trails to identify what are the key policy actions that we can take as a city. And so there is a waste project, which is about separating oil from water, which is a big problem in our system. There is also a nutrition project, which is about plant-based culinary training. And there's also a rural-urban project that's emerging. And the idea is that we pilot them, but also consider through this project how to scale them up. And just another mention for Milan. Milan are the team that are leading this. So quickly, just to end, the Food Cities 22 pilot was launched at the start of the year. And again, MUFPP are partners on this project. It's being sponsored by the UK government. We had the pleasure of Dr. David Nabarro launching it. And Dr. David Nabarro is heavily involved in the UN Food System Summit and is encouraging nation states to hold dialogues too, which is very much part of this program. And so our first series followed the food strategy for a city, and we're now going to be focusing on emergency food planning, which is about how cities respond to crises. So whether it's the pandemic or a climate crisis or a refugee crisis, how can cities be better prepared? So once again, thank you for your time. I've put a link to the initiative here, and there's my email if anybody would require any further information.
네, 고맙습니다. Thank you very much. So you share the very important information and experiences when it comes to the healthier and sustainable urban food policies. You also re-highlight the importance of the international partnership. And we'd like to begin the panel discussion for the second session. It will be moderated by Professor Hyung-Kyu Kim, Korea University. And they will have an in-depth discussion about the two presentations that we just heard. Hello everyone, I am Hyung-Kyu Kim at Korea University. We have well listened to two presentations and we have two discussants. As a moderator, what I felt while listening to these two presentations, this International Conference on Urban Food is a very important opportunity for us to learn from each other and teach each other. And two presentations in the session 2 are the good opportunity to learn about the cases of Milan, Pune, and Birmingham, and it also high time for us to realize the importance of international cooperation in the food system. And to addition to two presentations, we have two discussants. First discussant is Chung-Soon Kim, President of Citizens Committee for Food in Seoul City, and she will talk about how to reduce food waste and food loss. So please begin.
Nice to meet you. My name is Kil Chung-soon, and I'm in charge of planning and coordination of Food Committee of Seoul government. As Professor Kim mentioned, that I think it's interesting that all the people's lives are quite similar around the world. And when I work with the citizens in the field, and when we came up with the team for us to better plan, and today here I realized that around the world, the city officials and engaging in these food policies are having the same concerns. So I think the presentations from the two overseas speakers were very meaningful to me. The theme that we are talking about is food and how to reduce food waste. And throughout this system, how we're going to circulate the food supply system and consuming system. So I have prepared a discussing presentation. As the speakers earlier mentioned, that I also would like to suggest some statistics. According to the FAO, about 690 million people are suffering from hunger. However, about 30% of the whole food in the world are being wasted. I read a book about it's about why half of the world citizens are in hunger. So the food that we produce to eat is being wasted, and these wasted food are the core problems of emitting CO2. So in this oxymoron situations, that we have to focus on waste, and especially the supply chain from production to consumption system. According to the Ministry of Environment in 2009, the food waste statistics is about 1.5 million tons of food are wasted every year, according to the statistics released by the Ministry of Environment in Korea in 2019. So it means about 30% of the total waste that we collect from the city are coming from food waste. So it is clear that we need to reduce food waste, and we are introducing various policies. But since the COVID-19, that we have seen more increase in food waste, unfortunately. So for us to process the food waste, that we have built institutions or facilities to process food waste. However, citizens don't want to have these institutions or facilities near their villages. And also these, while delivering food waste and processing the food waste, that we are also seeing other issues like leakages and the bad smell. Of course, we can utilize this bio waste, however, and then we can reproduce it as electricity. However, only 13% of the food waste is being used. And also, the leftover of the food waste can be utilized as compost. However, farmers don't prefer to have this leftover compost, so we are distributing this compost to urban farmers. So the professional farmers don't want to use the leftover compost. So first of all, in Korea, in case of Korea, the food loss research is not enough. Mr. Andrea showed us a presentation, and in the process of production to consumption, he presented the figures, how much food is produced and how much is wasted. However, Korea is lagging behind in terms of making statistics in terms of production and consumption. So if we consider the whole thing, the big chain from production to consumption, it is clear that the food waste is causing environmental problem and it is causing further degradation of the environment. For us to tackle the food waste issue, we need to refrain from producing more. Of course, we have to utilize waste to recycle them. However, it is clear for us to, first of all, reduce food production. And if we don't reduce the food waste, then we're going to continue to degrade the environment. Recently, I was shocked by the figures. Seoul is a big city, 37th largest city in terms of population, and it's a home for consumption. And 20% of the whole populations of Korea live in Seoul. So Seoul has a great responsibility. Unless Seoul changes its policies and its trajectory, then the whole country will go through the same path of continuously producing the food waste. Of course, we have to reduce food waste, and we have to utilize the food waste. But beforehand that, we have to work together with all stakeholders to firsthand reduce food waste, preventing the food waste from occurring. I'd like to introduce one example of wheat food supermarket in Denmark. This is a supermarket that offers healthy foods at a lower price, and also that generates jobs for young people. We studied this kind of example because we wanted to adopt it in Korea. However, because of regulations in Korea, it is extremely difficult for us to get the food donation and then resell them. So it's basically banned. And there are areas that prevent us from producing more food waste. So for us to improve our policies, that we have to see the details and the loopholes of the policies and regulations, and we need to continuously upgrade the policies. So by improving the policies, we have to work at the same time to change the actions of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. She highlighted the role of the citizens. And the second discussant is Director Suyol Hong of Research Cycle Socio-Economic Research Center. He will talk about how we can build a recycling system of food waste inside the city. So as introduced, I'd like to talk about how we can upcycle the food waste inside the city. There are three perspectives we have to consider: how to reduce and how to upcycle the food produced as much as possible. And the third is that in the process of distribution and production, there are a lot of plastic wastes have been engaged in, and how we can reduce the plastic waste. So these are the three perspectives. So if you start, let's start with the first one, how we can reduce the food waste. If you look at the distribution and producing and production and processing, how we can reduce all the food waste generated from all different stages of a food system. And the second thing is that how we can reduce the one-time usable plastic. And actually the trend is increasing of the usage of a plastic container and plastic waste. So we have to consider how we can reduce the plastic waste. In France, they revised the law, which will be effective next year. In 30 different vegetables and fruits will not use or will use less plastic waste from next year. I wonder if that kind of policy is implementable here in Korea. If we prevent using some plastic containers for the fruit and vegetables, it will only lead to increasing the food waste, as it prevents food from damaging in the process of distribution. But I won't talk about that point. But I will focus on how we can upcycle food waste today. This is the food waste data released by UN. So I think it's well shared by other speakers. So let me just jump into the main points. These are the food waste generated in Korea, and you have to see how they are processed. What we have to consider is that Korea is having very systematic and sophisticated system to upcycle and recycle food waste. We have a very good system in place. And compared to many other cities at the global level, our system is really magnificent. We have to recognize that the food waste here in Korea is really tricky to reproduce and distribute. Despite of that difficulties, we are able to separate, to upcycle them. We have this kind of the policies from 15 years ago. It has been covered not only households but also restaurants and many big food processing factories. So this is a huge cases and successful case. However, we have a system to upcycle or recycle the food waste, but we have to see the efficiency and efficacy of the system. To separate and dump food waste generates some aesthetic issue. So many people at households are using disposer, and that disposer is widespreading very quickly. Even though this is illegal application, many prefer to have it because they don't want to deal with food waste. And the second thing is that food waste is separated and they are going to the recycling company. But we have to see if that food is safe to recycle and upcycle. As Seoul City said that most of the food waste generated inside Seoul go beyond the territories of Seoul, and many of that food waste are going back to the processing factory that is far away from Seoul to process them into the biogas. We doubt if that system is satisfiable and sustainable. That's the area we need to improve. So at this point of time, what we have to consider is the Korean ROT or lot model. From generation of food waste to upcycle and recycle food waste in a close distance is still possible. So food waste generated in city should be processed inside Seoul. We can have a distributed model to make that possible. So let's think about it. In a big apartment complex, we can build compost manufacturing equipment, and the food waste can go into this equipment, and the food waste can be reprocessed into the compost. And that compost can be utilized by the resident, or that can be sold to the other the manufacturers or producers. These days, many are turning to vegan, and they are growing some vegetables and fruits in their neighborhood by using the food waste. So these are very good healthy culture that we are having in the city center. And this culture can be combined with the food upcycling model. I think that there is another possibilities. And the food waste that go beyond the soul can be decomposed in other region, and that compost can be used to grow other vegetables or the crops. Then the crops and the vegetables that have been the harvest by using the compost can go back to the soil again. So Seoul City is kind of taking responsibility from the generation of the food waste to taking back the food crops that have been grown by using the compost of the food waste that the city has generated. So the last but not least, we have to consider the concept of food upcycling. There are two different concepts of food upcycling. The first is the food waste that people cannot eat. We use them for the compost or some feed for the stocks. But the upcycled food is meaning that to make that waste into the food that human beings can eat. And the second is efficiency about the food upcycling. The whole nutrition should be utilized, and how can we make most of the food spectrum of one food? So that is another concept of upcycled food. To sum it up, inside the city, there is a food resources which are circulating. Minimizing the waste is the best. If there is any food waste, we have to have some roof to recycle and upcycle those food waste. So we have to have that system to support that. And the third, if the food waste cannot be used as food for the people, then we can have a system to turn that into the feed for the livestock. And if the food upcycling is not possible, then the food waste can shifted into sources for the energy. And then the next will be we can have a larger scale the equipment to turn the food waste into some other resources like compost or the sources of generation. We have a good system, but that has a lot of holes in it. So we need to improve such kind of systems by the feeling those holds with better other systems. That's my arguments. That's it. Thank you.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
예, 박수를 쳐주셔서 감사합니다, 안드레.
Mr. Andrea, give him a big hand. Thank you for giving him a big hand.
예, 홍수열 소장님하고
So Mr. Hong and Ms. Kim
어떻게 보면 한국 사례와 관련된
shared kind of Korean cases. They made a kind of presentation. So their kind of discussion is kind of adding and supplementing two other international cases and presentations. To the interest of time, I'd like to address some questions that we received from the YouTube, and then we will move on to, if time allows, we will get some additional question. First, the question goes to Andrea. Korean food largely use grains, and it's very humid. The Korean food are largely liquid, so it's very difficult to donate the food. What kind of food or how they donate in what types of food? And the second question is that when it comes to the food poison or some other food-related safety issue, what kind of efforts are you making to prevent them? And the next question goes to Ms. Charlene Milou. At the end of your presentation, to respond to COVID-19 pandemic, how we can transform the food system, and to achieve that, you said you are operating the learning platform. And can you give us a little more information about what is your emergency food system to the crisis? If we have any solutions from the learning platform, is it possible to be implemented into the policy? So let's start with Mr. Andrea Magarini.
Thank you again also for these questions. I think that today we are seeing how our community of cities active on food policies are very mature for achieving next goal, because today also in the previous intervention I heard a lot of energy and enthusiasm to work in the field of sustainable food system, and it's very impressive all the time. And so thanks again. And coming back to the question, also in Italy we have a lot of not only dry food, and these are issues for 2 points of view. So first, an ethical point of view. So food doesn't need to be wasted, because incorporate a lot of culture, a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of natural resources. And is not accessible waste the food, and so all the time in which we can prevent we need to do, and all the time in which we are able to redistribute we need to do. And in those line of work, I think that's the solution of dry and not dry food is about logistics. So we need to improve more efficient and more fast logistics. And the hub is a perfect solution for this. The hub work as a food bank. So food bank are not innovative action, because are delivered from 30 years nowadays or more in some cities. But the important is to establish this kind of model at the neighborhood level, so at district level, in a small portion of our city, because in those kind of work we can recover immediately and donate immediately in a very fast way. And this is our solution. We see that is very efficient. And also to do this, we need to take in consideration that we need to monitor all of our effort and share with all of our partners these results. Because it's an element in which we can establish a shared vision of what are happening in our situation, in our context, in our hub, in our neighborhoods, and understand the different percentage of a different kind of food. In Milan, speaking about our case, in Milan we have a lot of quantity of bread, And we are thinking how we can do new food with this bread. So, for instance, beer can be done with the bread fermentation, or cakes in some other line of process. So we need to be smart and to move in a tactical way, discovering month by month, day by day, year per year, how we can improve the resources that we have, like these losses, and to try to prevent from one side and to try to build and establish and do co-design together new food.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Charlene, are you ready to answer?
Yes, so what I thought I'd start off with is just a couple of statistics. So before COVID, it said in the UK, 87% of households are food secure, which meant that 4% of people stated that, and sorry, not which meant, but 4% of people stated they had low household food security, and a further 4% stated they had very low household food security. And post-COVID, 9.9% of adults experience food insecurity. And this we're finding now is continuing because of the impact of the pandemic. And so now city authorities are in a situation where they are having to implement emergency food plans. And in our city, for example, they funded food to support people who needed it. However, they can't continue to do this. And so there was a survey done by C40 that showed that many cities were not prepared for the pandemic and were not able to support the citizens that needed food. And so this led to the idea of the emergency food planning series and how we can use the food strategies that we've been forced to implement to kind of use them as a stepping stone for a longer term food strategy. So in answer to the question, the learning platform has been designed to compile key resources which are up to date that can support cities, both who are trying to start on their food strategies. But in this context, the question is asking about whether they have access to this. But yes, everyone will have access to this. Everybody can attend the webinar series. And we're also producing What Works guides, which provide guidance on the kind of policies to implement to be more prepared for disasters, including climate change related disasters, migration due to disaster, so whether it's war related or now it's going to be climate related as well. And pandemics as well is a key topic. So I think that answers the question, but the link on the presentation will give you access to that. And the first webinar is actually taking place next week. And again, Milan are presenting because they had a fantastic response to the pandemic.
Thank you for your answer. Well, actually, we have many more questions, but to the interest of time, we'd like to wrap up the Q&As. And we have listened to 2 presentations and 2 discussions, and that inspire us. We face a very unprecedented crisis of a pandemic that gives us a lot of thought. One is sustainability and climate change, and the second is the value of the public. In particular, how the city government can work to improve inequality and improve the status of the vulnerability. While listening to the presentation of Mr. Andrea, we are actually learning each other, and the Seoul City is having the 5-year food master plan for the future. And I think many programs are interconnected. One good example is that the building of fresh food virtuous cycle system. So enlarge the supermarket. There are some fresh food that have not well sold or dealt with at the big supermarket, and that kind of special fresh food will be cooked and be served at the school meal. I think that is playing a critical role to reduce climate change. And I think I'd like to conclude the session 2 of Seoul 2021 International Conference on Urban Food. It has been quite a while for us to host this international conference. Not only Seoul, but also many global cities who are interested in the food system can join this conference to build better a dietary system. And taking this opportunity, I'd like to deliver my sincere appreciation to Director Park and her team and many other staff who organized this event. And also, my special thanks goes to Mr. Margani and Ms. Milu for being here online to contribute this event. And also, again, thank you very much for being here as an audience. Please don't forget to hit the like. So, Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. I highly echo with his last comment. If you really like the conference and if you learn a lot from the conference, please hit the like. And thank you everyone for organizing this event once again. So this is the conclusion of Seoul 2021 International Conference on Urban Food. It is very valuable for us to learn about Seoul City's 5-year food plan and many other global cities cases. This is the end of today's conference. As I understand, many are suffering a lot from the COVID-19. These days people are saying that let's find some time to meet up if the COVID-19 disappears. I hope to have this international conference next year without COVID-19. Once again, thank you very much, everyone. That's it. That's the conclusion of today's event. Thank you.